All right. Good Monday morning, everyone.
Woo!
Happy
Hello.
early Valentine's Day, and congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. The words are hard this morning, you guys, for winning the Super Bowl. I got to watch it, you guys, because I don't have cable, so I got to watch the Super Bowl and Rihanna, which was so much fun. But you guys listening to Author Talk with me, Amy, Sandy, Russell, and our lovely guest today is Tommy. So you guys, the weekend's been adventurous. I'm finally getting over my strep, which is just a big hurdle, you guys. I've never felt more sick, okay? So it was a big hurdle, but I went to Round Rock to celebrate my father-in-law's birthday, whose birthday is today. So happy birthday, Robbie. And then I drove to Bastrop to visit my mom because my niece was having a dance competition in there. So Saturday, I was a world traveler in Texas. Okay. We were going back and forth all over the place. And then Sunday, we watched the game and just kind of relaxed. So it was a good, relaxing weekend. What did everybody else do this weekend? Russell, what
I
did you
did
do?
watch this.
So
Cindy.
I
Go
had
ahead,
a
Russell.
I had a huge party for the Super Bowl that lasted so long that finally my dog came in and tried to get everyone to leave so we would go to bed. It was great. And then my wife had to get up at 5 o'clock this morning and fly to Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh,
So sh- so it was a we had a good weekend. It was a good weekend. I'm a Kansas City fan. Mahomes went to one of my many universities that I actually attended. So I've always been a fan of his, and I'm very happy about the outcome.
nice. I love it. Sandy, what about you?
I watched it, and I watched it mainly because I wanted to see one of my favorite country western singers sing the national anthem. So I love Chris Stapleton, love his music, and so that was exciting. I got chills watching it. But then I really didn't care who won the game. I thought it was one of the closest Super Bowls we've had in years. But it was an exciting game, and I also was glad the Chiefs won. So and
You know,
other than that, the whole weekend, my granddaughter did go hiking yesterday. Amy, she went up to the one of the state parks up around Huntsville and went for a like 15-mile hike with her dog yesterday. So we got to kind of check in on her and live vicariously through her a little bit yesterday. But it was a nice weekend, very nice weekend.
I don't think they should ever allow country western singers to sing the national anthem.
Why
Only
not?
And
opera si-
why?
because only opera singers can hit the note. And you
Well,
know the note I'm talking about.
I know.
So
Yeah.
they should be the only ones that sing it, in my opinion. Also, I love opera. So
True. That's a true
I
statement.
know you do. And also, you're a very opinionated person that
I
always
just
has,
don't think,
that you're a contrarian. You tell me that yourself. You
yeah, I just
whatever
don't believe
everybody else
people
wants, that's not.
that can hit the note should sing the song.
So, Tommy, what did you do this weekend?
Well, I didn't have nearly as exciting a Super Bowl weekend. I had a pretty quiet weekend. Went over to visit friends for a long 3 hour lunch and was absolutely delighted that the hostess decided to make cabbage noodles, which is my favorite Hungarian dish. And then on Sunday, the big excitement on Sunday was coming to the country house. Uh, I certainly enjoyed that. We have a country house about an hour and 15 minutes outside of Montreal, and with a lovely veranda overlooking a lake that right now is frozen solid. And I know it's frozen solid because people can walk along it and snowmobiles can go back and forth. So that assures me that the ice is rock hard solid.
That's
Not
Wow.
solid
awesome.
enough for me to go out on a walk for it, mind you, but I understand why others would want to do it.
That's
Right.
awesome.
No,
Now,
we're in Texas over here. Sandy and I are in Texas. We like our warm, 66 is chilly for us. We don't do good in Texas.
I like it too. Consider me jealous and envious of the warm temperature. Absolutely.
Tommy, I did want to ask you. So, also a good time to point out that you're in Canada, outside of Montreal. Um, do Canadians pay any attention to the Super Bowl at all?
Oh, yes, they do. Absolutely. I'm sure there were hundreds of thousands of Super Bowl parties across Canada. Absolutely. Yeah. I wasn't one of the ones
Ah,
at one
well,
of these Super Bowls.
that's great.
I was,
love
put
that.
it this way, I am sure that I was the exception to the rule.
Okay. Nice. See, I don't.
Okay.
We didn't have a Super Bowl party or anything like that. My husband doesn't really do sports. It's more me, and we don't have cable, so we had to stream it. But when Rihanna came on, though, I'm not gonna lie, you guys, I got ready, sat on the couch, and then I jammed out, and then my computer died right at the end, so I didn't even get to see the end. Okay, I'm just saying. But I was here for it. I was jamming out. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm a big Rihanna fan. Russell, I'm a Rihanna fan.
I am stupid about modern music like that, but I must say, I didn't even know that the songs that Rihanna sings, and so when she started performing, I was like, "Oh, that's on my run tape," because I'm a runner, Tommy.
You're right.
And then this next song, that's on my run tape. So I guess I'm a fan, and I had
And you
no
didn't even know
idea.
it.
Yeah,
I love it.
her songs are great to run to.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions before we get started. But before that, I want to thank the people that are listening to us on our podcast. Tommy, we do this every Monday morning live so people can watch our weirdness.
Yeah.
But we found out last year about this time that we were moving up in the podcast ratings, and we're like top 10 independent book podcast in America. So
Wow, that's
we're
great.
pretty excited about it. Most people don't watch us. Most people listen to us during the week. I want to thank them for doing that. Amy, where can they find us, and where can they connect with us on Facebook if they want to?
Yeah, so you can find us anywhere that you can listen to podcasts. So Amazon Music, Apple, Google, Stitcher, Good Pods, all of those, Spotify, iTunes. You can listen to us. Just type in Author Talk. I've updated since we've rebranded. I updated everything like that. But like Russell said, we're just incredibly grateful. We enjoy doing this. I've always mentioned before it was Russell's idea, but we enjoy doing this. And if you want to come and join our Facebook group or follow us on social media, you're more than welcome to. I tend to control what comes out of my mouth, but not my facial expressions. And I talk a lot with my hands, so it is very animated and funny to watch. So you're more than welcome to do that over on our YouTube channel or our Facebook group or on any one of our social media platforms. But we just thoroughly enjoy it, and thank you guys. And it's always fun to get to hear from new authors and their passion and their writing and why they decided to start a writing career. So it's always just super fun for us. So it's just been a lot of fun. Russell, thanks for letting me be a part of it.
I have a big question before we get started. Usually we're talking about something like last week we got into ChatGPT.
We are started
around our author, but there's something I've got to ask is if you're watching this on video, you will want to look down at Tommy's bio, which is unlike any bio that I've ever seen that we've interviewed. It's crazy. I'm hoping Sandy doesn't go into, I want to go into, but I have to ask you about the John Lennon and Yoko Ono Bed in Peace that you were in. Tell us that story.
All right. Okay. I'll tell you that story. I was a teenager, and John Lennon and Yoko Ono were doing a Bed in for Peace in downtown Montreal at the Queen Elizabeth Hotel. And I asked my friend Gail, why don't we go and see John Lennon, one of the Beatles? She says, don't be ridiculous. The place is going to be crowded. It's going to be full. We'll get nowhere near the place. I said, well, then we'll come home. Let's give it a shot. So I had a fake press pass, and I heard that Yoko was here with her 6-year-old daughter, Kyoko. So I brought a little set of crayons, and we take the bus and we head down to the Queen Elizabeth Hotel, and outside, nobody. And in the lobby, nobody, no security, no crowd, no nothing. And so Gail, who didn't want to come, and we're both getting in the elevator, and we'd heard on the radio that they were staying on the 17th floor. So she takes her finger and she's about to push the 17 button. I said, no, push the 18 button. Right. So we go one floor higher, 18, nobody there, walk down the stairs to the 17th floor, see some commotion around one of the rooms. We walk over, and I knock on the door. And just as the door opens and Yoko and Kyoko, little daughter standing there. There's a hand on the back of my neck. It's the security guy about to throw us out. He says, "I'm so sorry, madam. I'm going to throw these people out." And Yoko says, "No, no, no. No one's being thrown out. These are our friends." And the little girl says, Yoko says, "Can I have the crayons?" I said, "Well, sure." And Yoko invites us in. So we come in and she says this to me: "Would you like to meet John?" Can you imagine that question? Like during the height of Beatlemania, like, "Would you like to meet?" Yeah, sure, I would like to meet John. And so she introduces us to John Lennon. We interviewed John Lennon. And after the interview, no one's throwing us out. So why leave? Because, Petula Clark and Tommy Smothers and all kinds of people are popping in on this bed-in. And I feel sorry for Kyoko, the little girl. She's 6 years old. They cooped up in this hotel room. So I said, well, my sister is the exact same age. Maybe if it's okay, Yoko, we could take Kyoko to play, in the park outside my mom's house and have hot chocolate or whatever. She says yes. And get this. She hands us Kyoko, who's 6 years old. They don't know our name, no identification. They don't have our phone number, nothing. They just hand us the kid without asking for anything, trusting us completely. Anyway, we take Kyoko. She plays with my sister. We take her up for a Kalesh ride on top of the mountain in the middle of Montreal. And we go back at the end of the day. And then we come back the following morning. So we stayed there at the bed-in for an entire week, basically babysitting little Kyoko. Now, here's the kicker of the story. At the end of the story, right? And I write about it in the book. At the end of the story, we get $150, an autographed picture of John and Yoko, and which I still have to this day. And Gail, what she does is, after everyone's left, they've recorded "Gift Piece of Chance" in the studio, in the room. After everyone's left, she sees a bunch of cardboard papers on the table, and she takes those cardboard papers. Those cardboard papers are the lyrics to "Give Peace a Chance" in John Lennon's handwriting. So she holds on to those, and then decades later, I hear that Christie's is having an auction, and they're selling off the lyrics. Long story short, she sold them for £350,000. And what did I get? Absolutely nothing. A friend said I should sue her, etc., but I didn't, and I managed to avoid a war over "Give Peace a Chance."
That's awesome.
That's an amazing story. So in your bio, you have quite a few stories that we'd like to hear. Go ahead, Russell.
No, you take over, Sandy. I'm just dying to hear these stories.
Well, I'm afraid that with my sound not being as good as it is, that I don't want to cause any delays or anything. So I'm experiencing some delays where Tommy's concerned. Are y'all, or is that just my sound still?
You still have it. Tommy, let me ask you another couple of questions then.
Okay.
Tommy, so you also covered 13 Oscar ceremonies, is that right?
Yes.
So what was that like?
Well, it was unbelievable. I worked for a radio station and I worked for a newspaper, and I heard that I knew the Academy Awards were coming. It was the 50th anniversary of the Academy Awards. The first time I went, I told the radio station that the Gazette was going to pay for the hotel, right? And then I told the newspaper that the radio station was going to pay for the airfare. Neither had agreed to this yet. But after they heard that the other one was paying for something, they both went along with it. And so I went to cover the Oscars. Now, the second year, I just ordered the airline tickets, booked a room at the Beverly Hills Hotel, and didn't tell them anything. And just at the end of it, came back with the expense, with the receipts. And they said, "What is this? What do you mean you went to the Oscars? Oh, we do that every year. I say, oh, we do it every year. And so that's why when 13 years ago, I stopped going, because after 13 years, you've pretty much done it. But one of the years, get this, one of the years that I covered the Oscars, I took my mother along with me. And I had my press pass, and we're standing in front of the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, watching all the celebrities coming out of the limousines. And I have a press pass, and my friend Denny, who used to work for Associated Press, she says, you know what, Tommy, I'm just covering the arrivals. Someone else is covering the main event. I've got enough. Take my press pass, give it to your mom, right? And then she can enjoy it as well. So mom's wearing Denny's press pass. I have my press pass. I have a great time. All of a sudden, Denny rushes back and says, listen, I'm so sorry. The guy who's supposed to cover the rest of it, he called in sick. I'm really sorry, but I have to ask for my press pass back. Well, of course I have to give it back. It's hers. So I give her back the press pass, and now Mom and I are standing there. I have my press pass. She does not. So what I do is every now and then I take it off around my neck and put it on her and back and forth, hoping no one will notice. Well, one 6'4" LA cop does notice, and he comes over and he says, okay, which one of you two is Tommy Schnurmacher? So my mother chimes in and she says, officer, he is Tommy Schnurmacher. I am his mother. I don't have a press pass, but don't worry about it. I will walk home alone by myself in dangerous Los Angeles, but don't you worry about me. And needless to say, she charmed him. He puts his arm around the two of us, escorts us over to an area of the sidewalk where it's even easier to see the celebrities. So that's how Mom got to the Oscars. And by the way, that year, Robert Redford won Best Director for Ordinary People. And he was such a big star at the time that the local American press, the local LA press and the American press corps, the international press corps, he's such a big star, they were kind of nervous to ask the first question. So who stands up? A very short Hungarian lady, my mother, who says, excuse me, Mr. Redford, now that you've won an Oscar, are you going to run for president? So he finds that a charming question. So that's how Mom got to ask him Redford a question. But I have to tell you this, sort of speaking of Mom, and the book is about me and my relationship with Mom, called Makeup Tips from Auschwitz, how Vanity saved my mother's life. I also took her to the Cannes Film Festival. And this was something else. I'm deciding I'm going to take her to a nice restaurant. And the nicest restaurant near the Cannes area on the south of France is the Moulin de Mougins. So we're in a cab, we go to the restaurant, and we get in, we have our table, and she notices the actor Omar Sharif. And I said, Mom, you can't go bother the Hollywood stars when they're here. You know, they're here for the film festival. You can't go over to bother them. It's not polite. They come to this restaurant. They want their peace and quiet. While I'm saying all of this, of course, I'm talking to her back because she's already gotten up from the table and is headed right over to Omar Sharif's table. Now, I am nervous as hell. I can't look. I can't look in that direction. What are they going to do with my mom? Are they going to throw her out? This is so embarrassing. Then I finally peek over and I look over to the other side of the restaurant. And what do I see? I see Omar Sharif getting up, going to another table, taking a chair, bringing the chair over to his table and asking Mom to sit down at his table. And if that's not enough, the next thing I see is Mom taking Omar Sharif's hand in her hand. And she's doing this, right? She's putting her fingers along, like tracing her fingers back and forth on his palm. She's reading his palm. You know what's fascinating about this? She doesn't read palms. She's not a palm reader. She's never read a palm in her life. This was
So
her
this
her
is
character.
where you get your ability to scam a situation, to get into places. You got that from your mom.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. The sound.
Your ability to get into places like the bed, peace in bed, etc.
Right.
You acquired that from your mother.
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did. She had incredible nerve and chutzpah. And that's what got her through it helped her get her through the Holocaust. It helped her get her through the Hungarian Revolution. So what I inherited from her was that nerve, that chutzpah, the guts to do things.
So you've opened up 3 more cans. So she made it through which Hungarian Revolution?
The one in 1956, the Communist Revolution. And she made it through the Holocaust. She was in Auschwitz. She had a tattoo on her arm. And she made it when she got there. She's in a death camp. And get this, when they issue the prison garb that she has to wear, she doesn't like the way it looks. It doesn't fit right. So she exchanges her daily ration of bread for needle and thread and sews it up so it fits properly. She takes the swill that they serve them as the equivalent of coffee and doesn't drink it. She polishes her shoes with it to make them more shiny, pinches her cheeks so she looks better. And during the morning roll call, this woman, Irma Greza, an SS commandant in the camp on whom they based the film, Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, she says, how come you're dressed like this in a place like this? So my mother tells her the truth. My mother tells her exactly what happened. And what happens is Greza then hires her to be her sort of chichkash or valet, or like she tended her garden, cleaned her bicycle, cleaned her kitchen, and like did that. Now this woman could have killed her and shot people on sight for stealing a potato, for doing absolutely nothing. Now she didn't kill my mother. The reason she didn't kill my mother is she doesn't want to train somebody else once my mother knew her routine. So that's how her vanity and her nerve, when they said you shouldn't stand out, and she said she still wanted to have her dignity and look right even in these horrific circumstances. So that's what gave me that courage is, I guess, what I inherited from her and what I talk about to some extent in the book.
So one of the questions Sandy would ask, Sandy, are you able to ask questions?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Much better. Much
better.
Okay, good. So, Tommy, I don't know what question Russell was talking about, but I can tell you that one of the things I always ask is tell me the story behind writing this book. However, I mean, obviously, some of the stories you've already told give us some insight into your mom. But why now? Why make up the title of the book, as you said earlier? And Amy, I don't know if you're going to show the title the cover or not, but Makeup Tips from Auschwitz: How Vanity Saved My Mother's Life.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about the book now. We heard stories about your mom. We understand why anyone would write a book. So tell us about the book.
Okay, so about the book, why I wrote the book. When I was on the radio station, I had a 3-hour talk show on Montreal radio from 9 to noon, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, talking about every kind of issue you could think of. Local issues in Montreal, Canadian issues, American issues, international issues, political issues, entertainment. Every subject was a topic that we covered at some point or another. And during the commercial breaks, I would tell the news director stories like some of the stories I just shared with you. He says, your family stories are incredible. He says, one day you should write a book. But what happened is I can't work unless I have a deadline. I wrote a gossip column for the Montreal paper, and it had to be in by 3:30 every afternoon. It was in at 3:30. I had to be at the radio station to have a talk show at 9. I had to be there at 7:30 for the morning meeting. Every single day, I was there well before 7:30. I can meet any deadline. If I have to take a plane and it leaves at 8, I'm there 3 hours beforehand. So I'm very good with deadlines. However, if there are no deadlines, I can't do a thing. I just can't do anything. So what I did is I never got started. I never got started on the book. And I really wanted to write the book, and I just never got it done. And then one day I'm at a little bookstore in Montreal, in downtown Montreal, called the Argo Bookstore. And in the back, they rent out a little space in the back for $3 an hour where you could just sit around and have coffee and think writing thoughts, right? So I'm sitting there and I have an epiphany. I suddenly think, I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give it away. I'm going to write, I make a vow on Facebook that I'm going to write 500 words to 1,000 words every day by noon, 5 days a week. And I make a big deal out of this and a big promise of this on Facebook. So, of course, the next day, I have no choice. I absolutely have to write. And then I got, when I got to 500, I got to 1,000, got to 1,200. Once you're sitting there, once you've deposited your backside on the seat and you're typing, you're into it. And so then I started writing it, and that's how I got it down. Now, afterwards, I did that only for about, 20, like 20 days. Like, Costco will give you a sample, right? But they're not going to give you the entire roast. So I didn't want to give all of it away. So then I made another deal. I found some horrible organization that I disagreed with completely, and I made out a check to them. And I put the check in a small envelope and put the small envelope in a big envelope. And I told my friend, listen, I have to email you 500 to 1,000 words by noon, 1,000 words by noon every day. If I don't, take out the small envelope from the big envelope and throw it into the mailbox. And then I will have donated money to this horrendous cause. So of course, in half, the small envelope is still in the big envelope. It's never been mailed because, as you can see, the book got written. But that's what I had to do to create almost like this fake deadline or discipline. Because if there wasn't somebody telling me you had to do it, I just couldn't get around to do it. I'd always say yes when I have time, when I'm, soon, late next week, when I have time, then I'll do it. And that doesn't work because to get a book done takes a lot of work on a daily basis.
And I think I have that same disease. So since I've retired, I haven't done anything because I have no deadlines. So I do understand that, and that's some great ways of having accountability for your deadline. So you didn't just make a promise, I've got this deadline. You had somebody that was holding you to that deadline. That's
right, because
great.
How embarrassing would it have been, right? You go on Facebook and everybody say, what happened? You didn't put anything up yesterday, right? who wanted to go through that? So it imposed that, like I imposed the boss over myself, I guess.
Yep. So the book is out. The book is available. Absolutely exciting. I can't wait to get a copy of it and read it. And so tell those that are listening, where to get a copy of the book. Where's it available?
You can get the book. It's available hardcover, softcover, ebook, audiobook on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble. And if you like your local bookstore, if you give them the title of the book, your local bookstore can order it for you as well. So basically, you can get it anywhere. I'm glad you can get it anywhere. I worked hard on it. Like once it was done, I wanted to make sure that whoever wanted to get a copy of it could.
And so is the book filled with these kind of stories like you were telling about your mom?
Yes, the book has a lot of stories like that, funny stories, and also about the immigrant experience moving to Canada when I was a 6-year-old crossing the border. When we were crossing the border in the middle of the night, and there's this Russian guy who put like landmines everywhere. This Hungarian guy, at the order of the Russians, had put landmines everywhere so you couldn't escape from Hungary during the revolution. And my parents, the same guy who planted those landmines would then take money from people and he'd guide you around the landmines so you wouldn't step on them. So we had a small group of people and we're going across the border in the middle of the night. And my mother said, we're going on an adventure and we're going on a very exciting adventure. And you can only take very little with you. Take a couple of toys. And then I picked 2 toys. I narrowed it down to a mandolin and a little wooden streetcar. And then my mother said, sorry, you know what? We can't pack everything. You can't have 2. You can only have 1. So very well, the wooden streetcar doesn't do much of anything. It just sort of sits there. But the mandolin was interesting. So I bring the mandolin. And as we're crossing the border, I start to strum a little on the mandolin. Well, the guide, right here, if we're making noise, and the Russians could hear us, they'd shoot us all right dead right there on the border. So he takes the mandolin out of my hand, smashes it over my head, thus ending my musical career. That was the end of that. But that was a typical story of Mom, and you'll like this story, I think. This is my first day at school in Montreal. I don't speak a word of English or a word of French, right? But I'm sitting there in class, and everybody's got a pencil and a paper, and the teacher's up at the head of the class, and she's talking, but I have no idea. I don't understand one word of what she's saying. So I'll just sit there and try to sort of do what the others are doing. Then I see people are picking up their pencils. I pick up my pencil, but I don't know what they're writing or what she's saying. So I look over at the girl, at the paper, the girl sitting next to me, and I see she taking her pencil. And at the top right-hand corner of the paper, she's writing M-A-R-I-E. Oh, okay. So I take my pencil and I write M-A-R-I-E. She'd written her name, right? Her name was Marie. I didn't know that's what she's writing her name, so I wrote what she wrote. So the teacher got 2 papers from Marie. That was first day of school, not speaking a word of the language. A quick story. You'll love this story. Mom and Dad used to live in a duplex, right? They lived downstairs, and they had tenants upstairs. And one day the phone rings, and it's the tenant, and she says, "Mr. Schnurmacher, there's no heat." My mother says, "Move to Florida," and hangs up the phone. And the woman calls back and says, "Mr. Schnurmacher, I'm serious, there's no heat." Then don't walk around naked, and close the window. Bang, slams down again. Next thing, the tenant calls the police. The police arrive. They knock on the door. And Mr. Schnurmacher, we have a complaint. What's the complaint? The complaint is from your tenant. Your tenant says that there's no heat. What are you? The heat police. Go catch a crook. And she slams the door. And my father says, "Who?" My father says, "Who was that?" And my mother says, "Oh, somebody selling chocolate."
Was your mother not afraid of anything?
Basically, what you just said is a perfect analysis of Mom. After having been deported during the Holocaust to Auschwitz, she was afraid of nothing. It was like she knew that her parents were gone, that the worst that could have happened had already happened, and from then on, she literally became fearless. She was afraid of nothing, except, of course, were anything to happen to her son, she became very, very overprotective. To the point, you were talking earlier, do I do hiking? Do I do this? Do I do that? I don't. Why not? You move to Canada, it's winter, kids in Montreal, what do they like to do? They like to go skating. They like to play hockey, right? So I want to get a pair of skates like any other kid. And my father's nice enough, and he buys me a pair of skates, right? And we're off to the little park behind the house, Kent Park. We're off to go skating. Mama says, "Okay, you want to go skating with him? Fine. He will go on the ice. He will fall. He will break his head, his skull open. The brains and the blood will come out from the head. The red blood will make the ice look pink and red." I'm listening to this. I'm not going skating. That's all. I'm not going near ice. To this day, I'm terrified of the ice. If it's freezing rain at all, I won't go out unless I have cleats on, right? Before I go out. All having to do with her being overprotected. To this day, I do not know how to ride a bike. I do not have a driver's license. I do not know how to drive a car. All having to do with her being overprotected. And you know what else it does? This psychologically. This is the less humorous part. Psychologically, not only was she overprotective of me, which has its impact, but I become very overprotective of her. When you find out as a kid that your parent was in the Holocaust, you want to undo it. Can't, obviously, can't undo history. You can't undo what happened. But I become very over protective of her and try to fix everything. Like, when she'd be unhappy, when she'd be depressed or something, she'd tell me, it's your job, she tells me, it's your job to make me happy. And as a kid, I believed this. But of course, that's an outrageous thing. I mean, it's an abusive thing to say to an 8-year-old child. That's not my job to make you. My job, I didn't know this at the time. It took years of therapy to figure it out. Your job as a kid is to be a kid. That's it. That's your job description. You're an 8-year-old. Your job is to play around and have fun and be an 8-year-old. Go to school. That's it. And so she would do things like that. But on the other hand, there's a certain security I felt. Like one day I was talking in class, and the teacher said, I've had enough of you interrupting and talking in class all the time. Turned out to be talking was pretty good. I made a whole career of it, right? So talking in class, and I had to write out 500 times, I must not talk in class.
I had to do that too.
I tell my mother that I have to do that, right? You know what she does? She takes out papers and pencil and she writes it out. She says she thinks it's too cruel punishment. She writes it out for me. I bring in the sheets and the teacher looks at it and she says, "Who wrote this? This isn't your handwriting. Who wrote this?" I said, "My mother did." She says, "Your mother wasn't the one talking in class. You have to write it out. I must not talk class 500 times." So you know what my mother does? She rewrites it. She rewrites it 500 times in a childish handwriting. Because in other words, she completely sided with me. Like, if the teacher said Tommy did this or Tommy did that, then the teacher stood, because she was going to defend her son no matter what. So you had the abuse on to a certain extent on one hand, but you had the protection on the other.
So I have to ask you one question. What is the most precious memory of your mother that you shared in your book?
The most precious memory was very interesting, and this is something she said. She lived in that duplex, and then I moved them into a condominium. And then when my father passed away, she was living alone in the condominium. As she got older, she got help to be with her. And then after, when she couldn't handle that anymore either, she went to an elder care facility, and I'd visit her on a regular basis. And whenever I would visit her, at the end of each visit, she'd say, "Have a good life. Have a good life." And that was a wonderful comfort to me. And also when she did pass away, and I'll get into the details of what happened with that having to do with the book, when she did, I never felt that I had left anything unsaid. I'd done it all. I told her I loved her. I took care of her as much as possible. Like I said, I took her to the Cannes Film Festival. I took her to the Oscars. I took her to New York. By the way, the New York story. First time we get to New York, I'm 14 years old. You know what the deal is? She says, "I want to go to museums." Like most parents would think, you're taking a kid to New York. What are things to do with the kids in New York, right? Not mom. The visit to New York is for one reason. It's to go along 34th Street, because every dress shop in 34th Street says dresses $5. All dresses $5. So she wanted to look at every dress for sale in all of New York City. So the deal was, for every 7 dress shops that I go to, I get to go to one museum. Okay. I didn't know this was a bad deal. I took it, right?
I think it's a good deal. You got to go to New York City.
Yeah, well, yes, that's why I took the deal. And first of all, we went to about 40 dress shops at least. Only one museum, the Museum of Natural History, and she said after 5 minutes, let's go. And it's dangerous in here. Too dangerous in here. It's too quiet. By the way, when we'd rent a country house, when she'd come into the house, she'd go around, walk around first of all, she cleaned under the linoleum, like cleaned absolutely everything. And she'd walk around the house and go into the bedrooms and look underneath the bed. I said, "What are you looking for?" She's looking for murderers, just to make sure there are no murderers under the bed. She's got to clear out the house.
Could you blame her?
What? Sorry?
Could you blame her?
Yeah, yeah, I know. Under the circumstances, yes, that's what happened. So, but in New York, the first day when we're there, um, we're walking along to this hotel called the National Hotel, long since gone on Broadway and 7th Avenue and 42nd Street. I think it was $10 a night. And she sees a store that sells brassieres only, nothing else but brassieres. She's fascinated by this. So mom goes in, she says, you wait outside with the luggage. She goes in, buys a brassiere, and we're walking off the hotel, check in. She's so excited, she doesn't unpack or anything. She goes to the bathroom, changes, puts on her brassiere, then comes out, she's very sad. No, it doesn't fit. It's the wrong size. Could I take it back? Even then at 14, I said, well, I don't know if they take back brassieres. Oh, Tommy, please try. So anyway, so I've never been to New York before in my life. I'm by myself in New York trying to find the brassiere store. I walk in and, oh yes, there it is. I find it and I walk inside and I said, the guy sitting there said, I'd like to return this brassiere. My mother's a pretty lady with a Hungarian accent. She came in and bought it. It doesn't fit. Sorry, we don't give refunds on brassieres. I said, excuse me, are you the owner of the store? He says, yes, I'm the owner of the store. How long have you been the owner? He says, I've been the owner the whole time the store's been here. I've been the owner for 42 years. I said, oh, in the 42 years that you've owned the store, how many times has a 14-year-old boy come in trying to exchange his mother's bra? So he found that very funny. He says, okay, kid, it's never happened before. Here you go. Say hi to your mom. And you're right, she is pretty. Anyway, that was that. So,
You are so much like your mother.
Yes, and then on the way home from New York, and you can check the dates. It was in I think October '65. It was the blackout. All of the East Coast of the United States had gone blackout. We were at the train station at Penn Station, and they're crowded, and people are milling about, and every seat is taken, and tired. And Mama says, "Don't stand here, quiet. Don't say anything." So then she goes into like in a more open area and goes like this: sabotage, the Russians, it's the Russians. And of course, a lot of people here, they freak out and they're running off in all directions. People get up from the benches and take off. There's an empty bench. There we go. She says, sit down, and then we have a bench to stay on. That was the return trip from New York.
Wow. See, Tommy, I understand now why you wanted to write this book about your mom. You have such amazing stories and memories of her, and your mom sounds like such an amazing person. And like Russell said, that's not afraid of anything. And after the things that she's endured and stuff, you being so sacred and important to her, I feel like it's the biggest amount of like respect and love that you could do for your mom is to write this book and, you know, kind of tell the stories and stuff. And I love that you didn't, you lived your life and did everything, with your mom as you could, and you didn't have anything left to say and stuff because you had done all those things. I think that's everyone's goal, in life, and so I think that's amazing. And I could sit and listen to your stories and the incredible life that you had and how you had your mom be a part of that. And I think that's important. I'm a huge person that family is important. You only get one family. You don't always get to pick them, but you only get one family. So you love them and include them and all of those things. So I want to thank you just deep down for writing these stories about your mom and letting that memory go on, and for joining us and telling them, because that's how her memory will live on, and the memories that you have by this. And so it's very vulnerable to do, and I commend you. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Well, I really enjoy it. And also when I talk about her and I sort of do the accent a bit, I sort of feel that she's back. And I'm planning to go. I'm planning to go to Paris.
The accent.
I'm planning to go to Paris in a couple of months. And I wrote to the manager of a hotel where I stayed with Mom, and I told her this following story. This is really something. I'd been to I'd been to the to Paris before, and I stayed at a very rundown little hotel. When I was going with Mom, I obviously couldn't take her to the same place. So I saw when I was there at this rundown hotel, I noticed some nice hotels, considerably nicer nearby that weren't too expensive. So I figured we'll stay at that one, at the Grand Hotel Taran. It was called at the time, on Boulevard Saint-Germain, right across the street from the Café Flore and Café de Magot, two of the most famous cafes in Paris. So Mom has a terrible toothache. So she tells me to go downstairs to the concierge and ask for a glass of whiskey or vodka or something to gargle with, because of her toothache, right? So I go downstairs and bring her, a shot of whiskey, and then I go outside, and I'm meeting a friend across the street at the Café de Magot, and I'm sitting with him, and he says, "Look at that, what's going on across the street? Look over there on the second floor in that window. There's this woman standing there, and she's like completely doubled over, like her head is like, top of her head is facing the floor, her hair's hanging down, and she's shaking her head from side to side. What on earth is going on?" I said, "She's gargling with whiskey because she has a toothache." He says, "How do you know that?" I said, "Because it's my mother." So anyway, I told this story to the manager of the hotel, and I said, if possible, could I get that room, like the room right over the entrance overlooking the cafe? And she was so intrigued by the story. She said, yeah. She said, "I'm going to take pictures of the room outside and inside to make sure you get the right room." So she's arranged that.
I love
That is great.
And the whiskey thing, I still do that. My parents tell me that all the time. I believe whiskey, could cure cancer at the moment, because it's one of those, you gargle with it for everything, make honey with it for sore throats. I'm a huge advocate for that, 100%. But Tommy, thank you so much for coming and talking with us on All the Talk and sharing these stories in your book. It's been so incredible to hear them, and I wish that we had more time, but we are running out of time.
It was great talking to all of you. I love the questions. The questions were terrific. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat with you.
Oh, you're so welcome. It was such a treat for us. So with that, let's do closing comments, questions, statements. Russell, I'm going to go to you first.
I could listen to these stories all day.
Yeah.
All day. Especially in your mother, when you do your mother with the accent, it's the best part of every story.
Thank you.
Definitely comes alive. I can visualize the whole scene and everything when you do that, for sure. Sandy, what about you?
I love the stories too. I could have also listened, and I had several more questions about stories. So we'll have to have you back again sometime, Tommy, so we can ask.
My pleasure.
Because I definitely want to hear the Meryl Streep story and how she stepped on your foot. So,
okay. We'll
congratulations on the book. Yes, congratulations. I wish you the best, and if anything we can do to help you, just let us know. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, you guys, we hope that you all have a fantastic Monday and a great rest of your week. And until next time, bye for now, everybody.